from 7:30 to 4:30 at the holding company that I worked at, and then I would go to my showroom. I opened an office. I would go there from 5 to 9 p.m. every day for 2 years. I realized if I don't make this full time, I am gonna lose this.
You have knowledge, you're doing something, and if you can kind of figure out what that system and that framework looks like, you can then share it with other people, add value to them.
And within our company, we have 12 licensed master tools in which we use to help you get there. We were in 18 stores within the first year and a half of our business. You've got this amazing talent pool. You've got all these tools at your disposal, and if you don't have a roadmap and you don't have a direction, how do you know where you're going?
I'll never forget when I had a person say to me, you'll never have a training and development company, you'll never work in HR and learning and development because you're not formally educated in it. You just run stores.
Because you no longer have to go through the sampling process for months on months on months with your factory. You can use AI tools to cut down on time, cost, efficiency.
It's literally like Pinterest of trends.
So that positive mindset is truly a magical part of your brain that, by the way, we all have. Yeah. We just have to choose to use it.
Welcome to the Positive Effect podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I mean, I'm just uber excited to get into your story and share with our listeners more about Lubna Nejjar, what you've done. You're like a kick-ass woman, in my opinion. When I looked at your profile and like met you in Miami, I was just super impressed and excited to be able to work with you. And the purpose of today really is to talk more about your business, your career, but we'll get into some personal things too, probably, right? The Positive Effect is really created to make sure that we're sharing stories that have created a positive ripple, a positive impact and effect on the people that you work with. And so I know that you are doing that. So I'm excited.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for including me in this conversation. I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. We're on the grind in business, and we're on the grind with just people to people relations. And so to bring this back to the forefront of what we're about and why it's always important is a great reminder. So I'm humbled to talk to you about it today. Thank you for having me.
So I want you to share with our listeners, you know, you have an amazing career journey, and I know that you're a business owner and an entrepreneur. And what motivated you? If you go back to the beginning, start off, where did Lubna start with this entrepreneurial business journey?
I would say that really my desire to be an entrepreneur really came from my parents. My late father, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he owned a very successful business by himself that he started, and it became a multinational firm. He was a very successful man, and he started that with his own two hands, himself as an immigrant, a Palestinian, Jordanian American. He came to the States when I was a kid. And growing up, I always just saw him build his own office, move, a new desk into the office, hire his own people. We used to go to his office anniversary parties and celebrate his staff. And I always wondered, how did he get to this level? I loved how he treated his people. I liked his attitude when it came to business, when it came to just really how he conducted himself throughout his day. And even as a kid, I always used to say to myself, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna be cool like my dad. And I always kind of wanted to wear like a suit and just present myself the way my father did. Okay. I didn't know it would be on the business side of fashion, if you will. I just knew that I wanted to work in the business world. But when I started my company, I was working for a very large corporation. I was working in investor relations. I was working in finance. And I had a desire, my passion, my creative side. I had an opportunity to build this company, and I did. So I worked from 7:30 to 4:30 at the holding company that I worked at, and then I would go to my showroom. I opened an office in the city I lived in at the time. I would go there from 5 to 9 p.m. every day for 2 years.
Wow.
And it was still just a passion until I realized if I don't make this full time, I am going to lose this beautiful thing I'm building.
Wow.
And so I remember at the time calling my dad and saying, do you think I actually can do this thing? And he goes, if you don't, you're always going to regret it. And he said, corporate world will always be there.
That's true.
And so I took what I knew from my MBA and I put my 2 weeks notice in, and I took a risk on myself, and here I am 13 years later, having grown this business to what it is today.
And what do you do today, so everybody understands what you do?
So today what I own is Ilmoda Brands. It's a concept to market brand development agency. We work with so many different fashion and personal brands. We help take concepts and brands to market. So whether it's a fashion brand, our bread and butter is fashion businesses, but we do work with a lot of personalities. We've worked with a lot of influencers. We've worked with a lot of TV personalities to help them ultimately create their craft and take that to market. How do they monetize on what they're really known for?
And why is that so important for people in today's day and age? I mean, it's always been important. I know I worked for big brands and those brands didn't get there without doing that work, but why is it so important in today's day and age, do you think?
I think it's really important because a lot of times people are driving without GPS, if you will. Right. You've got this amazing talent pool. You've got all of these tools at your disposal, and if you don't have a roadmap and you don't have a direction and in which you're driving, how do you know where you're going? Right. And so to have a brand development process, and within our company we have 12 licensed master tools in which we use to help you get there. We help you create a roadmap to build your business. But when I first started in my entrepreneurial journey, I was going to say,
like you probably learned that along the way, right?
I did.
How did you figure this out?
I did. So it's not just from my academic background. A lot of times people are like, oh, you really went to school, you're highly educated, you had the money to go to school. Right. Yes, I went to school, but I really learned from trial and error as well. I built my own business, and my business at the time was Lubna Designs, was my fashion label. And it saw a lot of success very early on. We were in 18 stores within the first year and a half of our business. I started out in special occasion women's wear, so bridal, gowns, gala wear, beautiful beaded pieces that you may see at a couture runway show. That's really where I started. And then that was what I represented in my showroom with custom fittings and this and that. And then we moved into a contemporary label with a ready-to-wear line with trousers and blazers, that wear-to-work collection that I always saw myself wearing in my entrepreneurial journey. And then that's the collection that we took into stores. I then was published in all the big magazines. I got a lot of press and PR because I took my brand to all the big fashion weeks. But because I'm a business person, I didn't just take it to Fashion Week. I invited buyers, I invited media to my shows. And I took what I knew in business and I combined that with my creative sense, and I built my brand with a formula. And I wrote it all down. And all these designers within my community started to say, how did you get there? How did you do this? How did you do this? And in order to monetize on that advice that I was giving them, that's when I created Ilmoda Brands.
Okay.
And so it evolved into this beautiful flower that it is today, and it's done so much amazing work. I've since published a university textbook called The Power of Branding in Fashion. Wow. It's utilized at the Ohio State University in Ohio, which is one of the largest merchandising schools in the country. Right. And a few other schools are utilizing as non-mandatory texts, but Ohio State uses it as their mandatory text. Okay. And so much has happened in the business since then, right. But that's what I do today is the agency.
I mean, I think for those of us that have this expertise and this experience, right, the fact that you could then document it and put it into frameworks and systems, I say that to people all the time. You have knowledge, you're doing something, and if you can kind of figure out what that system and that framework looks like, you can then share it with other people, add value to them, and make a business out of it, which sounds like that's what you've been able to do. So it's incredible. When you think back to your younger self, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh gosh.
Knowing what you know now. And people always ask me that question. I think it's always an interesting question to ask people.
What would I tell my younger self? It depends on how old she is. Okay. You know, because if she's, you know, my younger self had a lot of very unique opportunities. I came from an immigrant family. I moved to the States when I was an early teen. So I also lived in Europe for a lot of my college days. I lived in Geneva, Switzerland. I lived in Berlin, Germany. I had very unique experiences throughout my education. So I would say to her, maybe in her 16-year-old age, do what you're going to do, but maybe document it more so that when you're older, you can appreciate your learning journey.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Because sometimes even in business, like I look back and I talk to my team on a daily basis and I say, I can't believe we did that a few years ago. That's so cool. Yeah. I forgot we did that. That was so amazing. We used to do these massive gifting suites we did them at the Grammys, at the Hip Hop Music Awards, at the Oscars. We would do these PR gifting suite packages, and I'm like, for on the PR side of our business, I'm like, and we haven't done that the last couple of years because we just didn't have clients that needed that work. Right. And we were looking through our archives and photos for something, and I found these photos, and I thought, we haven't done this in forever. We haven't talked about this in forever. Why haven't we talked about this?
Because if you're a creative and if you're like me, I'm always creating something new and getting inspired and then building something. Right. And I said to myself and my team the other day, we're not going to not be creative, but we're going to get creative with what we already have, because we have so many tools and so many resources of things that we created, and we just need to get creative with how we take it to market instead of making something new all the time, because you do have a lot of good things from the past. So I like that. You tell her to document things more. That's good advice.
Write it down. Yeah. Write it down. I was taught to not, take everything so personally, and I don't. But I think naturally you sort of do a little bit, just by nature of life as being a human being. We're not robots. But I would say, be a little stronger in certain environments, and your passion is enough to get you, if you're passionate about something, it's enough of a decision to follow that path. Okay. Because sometimes they say, growing up as a Middle Easterner, you're either a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're some sort of physician field.
Some like academia, right, like profession.
Yeah, okay. So when I say to my family, hey, I know I'm very educated in all these things, but I want to be a fashion designer, they looked at me like I was psychotic, and I had been so educated in all these other fields. I had an internship at the UN, I did all these things. Right. And now here I am designing clothes in a showroom in the city.
But I would say probably because of your background and because of all the business education that you had and being around your dad and doing those early on years, you built your business on a really good foundation. Yes. And that's probably what you help brands with. Because a lot of people, entrepreneurs, they run at things and they want to build things, but they don't necessarily have that business. I know I've struggled with that. I didn't go to school, right? I just got into retail, figured it out, open stores, figured it out, got really good at people, but the whole budgeting, forecasting, P&L, all of that stuff, that business, for a long time I felt like, I don't know that, but I ran millions of dollars when I ran retail stores, so I think sometimes I think that's really unique that you had that and had that experience. It probably put that foundation in.
I think so, and I was always okay with rejection. I remember when I started my business, every time I would travel somewhere, even if it was on vacation, I would say, you know what, let me see what designers live in that city and see if maybe I can just pick their brain and I don't know why I wanted to do that. I just figured there's got to be somebody more successful than me. At that point, I was a new designer that's gone to market. I only showed at New York Fashion Week once. I've only been in a couple stores. Certainly there's way more people more successful than I am. Right. Surely somebody will pick up the phone and help this little old girl that wants to start this little label, And so I would call people and I would send an email, and for every 10 emails I might get 2 in return, and those people ended up really helping me.
You got to get really good at rejection. Yes. You're making me think about the first time I ever went online and Googled life coach. I was like, what is that? It was about 12 years ago, and I Googled top life coach, and I ended up calling this guy. This is in Canada, and he's like, yeah, come by, this is where I live. And I get there, and I'm like, oh man, he's the guy off Style by Jewelry, Bruno Greco. And I was like, he actually took the time to have a coffee with me and talk to me about coaching, because I actually went out of my way and Googled him, found him, and tracked him down. So I think the resilience piece of that, and just not taking no, and getting comfortable with no's, is a big part of being in business, right?
Yeah, I think there's the rejection. There's a difference between being ignored because people are busy, and then there's the rejection because you're just not quite there yet. In due time, we'll have a meeting where we will talk. I'm sure we will cross paths again. Yeah. And then there's I'm not going to have a meeting with you because I don't want to help you.
Yeah.
And there's that piece that I had to get comfortable
Okay.
with, because I didn't go to design school. I went to business school.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was taught design by a master seamstress. There's only 200 some of those in the country. I found one that taught me all my technical work, right? I paid her cash to teach me everything I knew. I was devoted to this craft, and I was going to learn it. If it was just something that was the end of me, right?
Right.
And so I had a lot of doors closed because I think I didn't do it the traditional way. And
right.
so doors were closed.
Right.
And then I published the university textbook that's now adopted in these academic spaces. And now I'm on speaker series, speaking on stages in front of students, and I'm lecturing the youth on these programs and how to do X, Y, and Z with these formulas. And I just don't think people like to hear that. But to your question earlier, it's that there's so many tools out there, and the future generation, so many of them aren't going to school, and they're going to find a way to do what they love and to create concepts, to create business, and to create opportunities for themselves. You either lean in or you don't. And I found a way to make it work for me, to make what I loved work for me. And I did work honestly, I did it with integrity, and I stayed true to my word because that's how I was raised. And all those people that closed those doors, I just acknowledged that they closed them. And at one point, there was a couple people I can think of today that I had a chance to actually help them, and I did help them, even though they closed the door on me. And it actually made me feel good to still help them. Because, and they asked for a referral, and I did it. Because, and they know the truth. I know they closed a door on me, and they ignored me when they didn't have to.
Right.
You know, they could have helped me at a time when I was a growing business, and now they see me on this national stage doing what I'm doing, and they're thinking, how the heck did this girl get here? You know what I mean? But
I mean, I think that's what a positive person does. I think that's the effect, and that's why you're here, is that people that have a positive effect on others, regardless of what, has been thrown at you or how people have treated you, and you always step up and do the right thing, it always comes back around. I'll never forget when I had a person say to me, you'll never have a training and development company, you'll never work in HR and learning and development because you're not formally educated in it. You just run stores. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and build my own training company then, right? And then off I went, and who are the top leadership coaches? Who are the top leadership programs? And I just was like, I just studied. And, look at where we are now. I train the best brands in the world, So I think resilience goes a long way. With the era of AI, we can't not talk about AI because it's everywhere right now, and every business owner, every leader. I was just on a conference yesterday hosting a table about it. How is AI shaping and shifting what you're doing with business owners?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I love what you're doing with AI, by the way. I'm very excited with what you're doing. AI has so many touch points with what we're doing in our business, specifically within Ilmoda, and then some of the other areas that I work with outside of the business that I'm kind of involved in a philanthropic way, and then on the academic side as well. I am working on my doctorate in business. I don't know if I mentioned that. So with school, we're not allowed to touch it. Don't touch it. It's a 10-foot pole because I'm working on my doctorate. Don't touch it. You can use it as a reference point, but you're not allowed to touch it. So academically, we are told no. Okay, but I think for your listeners who have ever obtained a degree, especially a high learning degree at that level, they've probably heard something similar. I think the academic space, they're a bit afraid of the plagiarism piece and that kind of thing. But on the business side, because we are in a space of innovation, and we're in the space of intellect and creation and sort of idea sharing, think tanking, it's everywhere in our business. Whether it's on the product development side, where it's saving so many brands so much money because you no longer have to go through the sampling process for months on months on months with your factory. You can use AI tools to cut down on time, cost, efficiency. Or it's a communication tool. It's an amazing communication tool. But there's so many different types of AI usage that exist.
There is.
And so There are folks like yourself that have taken AI and created their own tools within artificial intelligence, or there are existing AI tools that folks have integrated. We've integrated some AI tools that have made our business a bit more efficient in terms of very simply note-taking, very simply turning over documents within our organization, communicating with clients. We have an interface within our company. One of our master tools is sort of a client interface that we use. That's AI powered, completely, start to finish. It's monitored by a human.
Well, it's interesting because when I was hosting a roundtable this week with retail executives, right, they were like, you got to get on this, because back in the day, before we had our own platforms, everybody was sharing sales results and this and that on WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups when Facebook first started, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, Facebook has all my data. So it's like you gotta get on top of that now and like figure out how to kind of input everything and keep it, if you don't want everything out there, kind of contained, and how you make sure that that's private and protected. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think innovation with AI is just so exciting, right?
It is, and there is, to your point about the protection piece, is still fairly unknown. When it comes to the personal protection piece, I mean, somebody brought up the other day at a social dinner the use of Wikipedia. Wikipedia, AI is essentially, it integrates a bunch of information. It's collected from an algorithmic, information tool that a whole bunch of people put in information, and it gathers that, and it just, now that is the information it knows. It's a computer of all of what we know. The more you input, the more it knows, right? But Wikipedia, very simply, is sort of the same thing. Thinking about it for a second. Right, you go to somebody's Wikipedia page. Somebody mentioned it the other day, and I thought, that's kind of weird, but similar. Somebody's Wikipedia page, it's like, it's human monitored, it's human inputted. And it's approved by a person, and it's the same thing to some degree, right? But it's not regurgitating information to you. It's not doing any of that. But the point is, what we read is what we believe. And so as a person that is learning through these tools, and you are using these tools as fact, or you're taking them and regenerating them for something else, you just have to be careful with what you're using it for and how you're using it. So as far as protection and privacy, those things are I think we do need to start talking about those things as well in business. We use them. We use AI in so many ways to help make business more efficient. But there's such a long answer.
It's really interesting because I was at this event this week called Trend Hunter. Have you ever heard of them? No, me neither. They're for people, go find Trend Hunter. It's literally like Pinterest of trends. Okay, so like technology trends, things that are coming into market. They're Canadian based, which I love that because I lived 16 years in Canada, and I was at their conference and it was AI, and they were literally showing all of these trends, and it was incredible. Like, they showed this little baby robot that's like a friend to your kid. I don't know if you've seen those. Yeah, where like now, it will talk to your kid and like it's kind of like befriending, but like not in a spooky way, because I actually thought about when I was watching that, I was like, when we were younger, we all had make-believe friends.
Right.
So now you just have a robot, little friendly one sitting in front of you. It's the same thing. It's just now it's manifested into reality.
Well, it probably knows what color you like, and it knows what food you like, because it's listening to the world around you, right?
Totally. It's so interesting.
Wow.
So anyway, how do you stay so positive and grounded? And because you have a lot going on all the time. And I think when I speak to business owners, one of the things is like they're so overwhelmed or they get stressed, and then their team feels it, right? Like, I work with leaders of teams, and like, how do you stay positive? What's your formula?
How do I stay positive? I think positivity it's a lifestyle, if you will. It's a lifestyle for me. You and I talked about this the other day. Is like, you asked me, you said, have you been meditating? And I said, I haven't been meditating. I've been so busy and on the go and making sure I'm getting my water, my sleep, my this, that I'm forgetting to meditate. And maybe that's why I'm not getting the best of sleep, right? But it's a balance, right? For me, I was raised to always let the heavy stuff go. work through the problem, and I'm sort of a negative magnet away from the negative things, right? I don't, how opposites attract.
Yeah.
I repel the negativity. I don't like the negative stuff. You have to acknowledge when things are not good so that you can work through them.
Yeah.
But I do believe that everything is temporary. And so if you remind yourself of that, tough things, you just get through them. The only constant we have is change. So a bad day ends. A bad moment ends. A bad deal, a tough moment with a client, it's over at some point. And all you can do is learn from it.
Right.
And all you can do is just try to work through it. And we're not in this idealistic world. There's no magic potion. There's no magic formula. I don't have a master tool in my business about how to live positively. There is a great book called The Positive Effect, though, that you can probably read by my great friend. But for me, it's truly a mindset. And you have to, sometimes it's hard to be positive, but you have to remind yourself, in this moment, I am fine, as Eckhart Tolle says.
Yes.
In this moment, I am fine, and I have survived worse things, and I will survive worse things. And in this moment, things are okay, and it's going to be okay.
So what I heard is like presence, like letting go of things, knowing things aren't permanent, which I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with. And positivity is a lifestyle. It really is a lifestyle. Like people say to me all the time, why are you so positive? And I'm like, I work at it.
Yeah.
I wish people would ask me what I do to be so positive. Like I wrote an article this week about people always ask me like, wow, you're so positive, like how are you so positive? And my answer is always I work at it. But nobody ever says, okay, so what do you do? Like, what is the work? Because that's really what's important. It's what you do to maintain it. It's going to be different for everybody.
That's right.
I think people have different traumas, different backgrounds, different triggers. And so you have to kind of work through that yourself, but you do have to have some kind of process that you work through.
Yes.
And it's a commitment every day.
It is, and I will say this, I mean, a big part of it is, I was just talking to my brother about this the other day, is you are what you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with positive-minded people, you will be more positive. If you socially and professionally, personally and professionally. I talk to, I'm blessed to have a wonderful relationship with my mom. My mom is my best friend. Judge me or not, she's my best friend. I love and I enjoy my time with her. I call her every morning, and I enjoy spending time telling her about what I have going on, And she's an extremely positive person.
Really?
She's been through a lot in her life. And she is very, very positive. She's got the mindset of a person who could probably write the greatest book we will ever read when it comes to mindset. Because she's been through so much. She moved to the States when she was 21 years old, and she had 3 little kids shortly thereafter, and then moved back to the Middle East, and then moved back to the States, and spoke 0 English, and had to acclimate to an environment in 1988 in a country at a time when there was not a lot of Arab Americans,
Right.
And so to think the positive mind that you have to have, the adaptation, the resilience, to use your word earlier, and then to deal with my creative, crazy dad, rest his soul, who probably was driving her crazy at the time, She had to probably be the most positive person in the world. Right. And so I get a lot of fuel from her.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I do ask her for a lot of advice. And I think, if I call you and I say, April, I've had a really tough day, and I had a the other day you and I were at a networking event, and I told you, I said, my first call this morning, or my first thing this morning was an email at 6 a.m., which was really tough to read, and I'm pretty sure your next comment to me was pretty positive.
Yeah.
You kind of told me like, this too shall pass to some degree. I can't remember your exact words, but I share these things with people that I know I'm probably going to get some positive reinforcement from, because my hope is that I don't want to stay down in the dumps about it. I know it's a temporary moment. I don't want to stay in a place of negativity, because why?
And it's funny, because when you actually start having this lifestyle of positivity and really paying attention, and it comes to you where people start complaining about weather and this and that, now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like you're like, rebel, girl, you know. It's really interesting because I know the laws of cause and effect, and what you say, what you think about, you create more of. So that's where I'm always like, okay, how do we shift this? Not change, but shift it in a better direction, you know? And when we're leaders in business, we're impacting people every day.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes days are hard, right? You kind of have to know your audience, and you have to say, hey, I have to talk about a tough thing. Do you have space for it? Can you help me carry this heavy thing, you know? And you carry it, and then you just have to have the intention to just move through that tough thing. But to be in a negative mindset, you can't be a creator. You can't be an innovator. You can't use that other side of your brain that helps you work through the tough stuff if you're negative. So that positive mindset is truly a magical part of your brain that, by the way, we all have. Yeah. We just have to choose to use it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're wrapping up the conversation. Thank you so much. This was great. I can't wait for everybody to listen into this. Is there any last parting words of advice that you would want to share? Anything I didn't ask you about? Maybe like, I don't know, a piece of advice that you got a long time ago, or something that you could share to add even more positivity or value to the conversation?
I would say, first of all, thank you for having me. This was wonderful. It was such a natural conversation, and I'm grateful to be here with you. But I would say for anybody just going through a tough time, whether you're building something new or you've created something great and it's on the cusp of being even greater, just stay the path. Because a lot of times, especially nowadays, it's all, you know, it's tough to create. We're all, you know, you have to think about the monetary piece of it. Keep driving forward. Something got you to this point to want to make something new and make something great. Don't give up on that idea. And a lot of times people call these ideas dreams, but there's a part of your brain that came up with this idea, and it's supposed to be there. Right. So call it what you want to call it, stay positive, and keep moving forward.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lubna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.